All right. Hello and welcome everyone to a builds refresh for Mesa. Now, it's important to note that Mesa does not really need a builds refresh and most things here are the same. However, I have received so many questions about this build on stream and am showing it and talking about it so much that I feel like by not making a video on it, I'm kind of gatekeeping using this build because it fixes the one thing Mesa didn't do before. And that is that before, she wasn't fast. But now, she's very fast and can very easily keep up with even a Warframe like Wukong, a bit dependent on the tile set. We're not quite as fast as Wukong, especially not if one is trying very hard to go faster than us. But if you are, let's say, like racing a less experienced player or something, this is going to be faster than most Wukongs are going to be able to go. And Wukong is one of like the kings of speed in the game. He's no Titania, but he's damn fast. And we retain all of the advantages of being Mesa. That being, of course, her 4, her 3, her 2, and subsuming pillage over her 1 for a very powerful defense strip. And the way that we are doing that is that we are using Archon shards. So I am using 3 Amber Archon shards, all on parkour velocity. And then these other 2 red shards are just 2 on ability duration. These are very much not necessary at all for this. More duration is, it's comfortable on Mesa. I like having more duration just so Shatter Shield and Shooting Gallery need to be refreshed less often. Also, the duration converts into some efficiency for Peacemaker. Not that that really matters. I think I was already at max efficiency without them anyhow. So that stuff doesn't really matter. So the duration, don't worry about these shards. The red ones don't really matter for this. But these do matter. And it's worth noting, we are going to go over a hyper maximization that is slightly different in terms of the Archon shards as well. But the build itself has remained pretty much the same. This is not a 400% for a 100% strip pillage. You can build that way on Mesa, but I feel like it compromises her energy economy too much and doesn't allow you to use Peacemaker as much as you'd like. Also, we have to run Molt Augmented in a build like that, and Arcane Velocity is just so good on Mesa that I really don't feel like that's worth it. Also, against the vast majority of enemies, Mesa has enough damage that using Pillage just one time is more than enough to get through, and it's really not a huge deal to cast it twice either. Also, if you have a couple extra corrosive projections in the party, this ends up being a 100% strip anyway, which works out quite well. So yeah, overall, the build is the same as it was before. We're using Prime Flow for a huge stack of energy to be able to stay in Peacemaker a long time if we need to, and also just, fill up with Energize and so on and so forth. Fleeting Expertise for really good efficiency at the cost of duration, but because we don't really need range, we get to use Narrow-Minded. Adaptation for way more survivability, especially alongside the shields we get from Pillage. And then Umbral Vitality and Intensify, again, for way more survivability. Umbral Vitality really not necessary here. You could go with a lot of different mods in this slot. But having all that extra health, it's really helpful against Toxin procs and like just generally not having to give a shit about what enemies are doing to you. And then even more duration with Prime Continuity. Mostly as kind of a, it's a sort of efficiency because you need to cast these 2 abilities less often. And also, casting them less often gives you the ability to do other things. And, of course, Mesa's Waltz so that we can move around during Peacemaker, which is incredible. Notable, Mesa's Waltz does other stuff besides let you move in Peacemaker. Mesa's Waltz has some bonus effects wherein there's no animation for drawing your Peacemakers anymore, so you draw them instantaneously, which is, of course, a huge boon. And most notably, you can't just move at 50% speed, you can roll, which this build is taking full advantage of. In that, we are on whatever secondary weapon you bring instead of the usual build with Galvanized Diffusion, which is a better mod. This build actually opts to use Amalgam Barrel Diffusion because the dodge speed makes our rolls incredibly, incredibly fast, and with the parkour velocity that we are getting from our Archon shards, we are getting huge amounts more boost to that as well. Before, there was really no great way to do this on Mesa because Arcane Consequence would have taken one of your Arcane slots, and also Mesa doesn't headshot by default for her 4, so it would be hard to, keep that going indefinitely in your Peacemaker. But with these, they are always active. giving you the ability to not only just be fast regularly and have very good bullet jumps and extremely fast rolls, but also be able to simply open up your 4 and roll around in it and not leave your 4. And this is going to be faster than most Warframes, depending on the tile set, of course, as you can't jump during this. But this is an incredibly fast way to get around. Also, Mesa will always orient to wherever you are looking, which makes it really easy to control, especially even through like tight hallways, because you're going to be able just to go wherever you are looking. Or, of course, you can always do like, you know, backflips and side flips as necessary as well, which is just excellent. So you can go fast during Peacemaker, allowing you to just clear rooms insanely quickly, especially if you're not on Steel Path and don't ever need to cast Pillage, because the clear is just so quick, rivaled only by, you know, like other frames that are extremely good at that, like Titania, which just is excellent functionality. Also, Regulators build. This is the Regulators build. This has been the Regulators build for a good long time. Worth noting, Galvanized Shot, if you are not using Arcane Velocity, you should be using Anemic Agility instead of Galvanized Shot. I like Galvanized Shot whenever I am using Arcane Velocity, but the fire rate is definitely better if you are not doing that. But Galvanized Shot gives you kind of more of a top end and a bit more status, which I like. Also worth noting, you never run Hornet Strike in this build. I know this doesn't have access to an Arcane, which is usually the thing that makes that happen, where you have Arcane Merciless and then like the additive stacking and yada yada. But the way that Mesa works, in the reason you don't run Hornet Strike, is this stat plus damage is actually the same way Power Strength is applied to Mesa. So in her Peacemaker, you can see that 3.15 multiplier. That is the same as a plus damage mod like Hornet Strike, so you're better off going in with these mods, as you're gonna, like, obviously Galvanized Shot also stacks additively with that, but as long as you have Arcane Velocity and you're already getting fire rate and like a very good source of that, then you can use this. But Hornet Strike is just not really worth using at all. It's definitely going to be more damage, so like if you don't have access to Anemic Agility or Galvanized Shot, then I suppose you can put Hornet Strike in, and it's not like it's going to be bad, but generally speaking, you don't want to run Hornet Strike unless you are on like a low power strength version of Mesa, which I also would not suggest, as pretty much all the subsumes that you'd want to throw on her are going to want a good amount of strength, and strength just helps her overall. You need like minimum 130 for Shatter Shield anyway. But yeah, pretty normal Mesa stuff otherwise, other than just being super fast. You just got, put on the survivability, strip some armor, kill them all. And then worth noting, like, your damage, for anyone who doesn't know, as that ring closes, Mesa's damage increases. So being able to, like, roll around and have, like, your focus in and, like, keeping that actually will be increased damage for Mesa overall, meaning you have to aim more, but the damage increase is extremely significant, so yeah, that's what's going on with Mesa. Basically, this is an update that, like, being insanely fast is incredibly good. Before we get into the Steel Path stuff, I do want to note there is like an insane maximization you can do, provided you have 5 Tau shards. That being, you can consolidate these Amber shards into 2 Tau Amber shards for the exact same amount of parkour velocity. I probably will eventually experiment with 3 Tau shards just to see if that's maybe too fast on Mesa, but I definitely want at least this much parkour velocity on Mesa. Every single one of these that I installed in her over like the weeks of getting them was just better and better every time. So I definitely am going to experiment with higher. But the thing that you can do is experiment with putting these down to 2 slots, and you have 3 slots to work with. Once you have 3 slots to work with, and I've been told by people that have tried this that 2 Tau Blues is enough for this, but if you put 3 Tau Blues in for Energy Max, it actually will open up a slot on Mesa, because I don't really think that she needs all the energy that you get off of Prime Flow. But if you got the 225 from those Tau shards, you could then drop Primed Flow, and there's a few things you can do with that. Number 1, you can go for Stretch. Stretch is, in the past, a thing that we would run on Mesa for convenience, for like the ring size, and for having like a little bit more range on Shooting Gallery and yada yada. So there's reasons to throw Stretch in here. Also, of course, that increases the range of pillage and so on and so forth. It's just generally of benefit and possibly a bit better than just adding like the little bit of duration that I've got right now. But also, there is another mod that is pure quality of life that many people have not heard of that was recently buffed. Thank you, Pablo, for that. Kavat's Grace. So this says resist hard landings from falling at speeds of up to 40 meters a second. So before, this was not very consistent because it has the restriction that you see listed on it, because there was a limitation on it for whatever reason. That limitation has recently been removed. The text on the card hasn't been updated, but there is no limit to how fast you can be going to remove hard landings. So Kavat's Grace entirely removes all hard landings. And especially whenever you're moving around rolling in Mesa's Vault at the speeds that you're going, this will prevent all hard landings, which means two things. Number one, you can always trust that, like, no matter what you're like rolling down from, you're not going to hard land, and you're always going to just like still be shooting in your 4 and yada yada, and still be moving and like going very quickly. But also, you get to do like kind of the classic like jump up and Mesa 4, and then whenever you land, you won't hard land. You'll just keep shooting, and you can instantly like stick and move to whatever you need to do. And for me, that's what I want to try. Regardless, having an open slot for flexibility, I think is really good, and I'm gonna want something there, even if the something there is, well, Prime Sure-Footed is an upgrade. There's a lot of options whenever you open up just one slot on this build, which could be Umbral Vitality, but it's much easier to drop Prime Flow because of the shard system than it is to drop Umbral Vitality, in my opinion, because this is also, of course, like dropping Strength. Another thing that is worth noting that this could be replaced with is actually the other Umbral mod. You could put Umbral Fiber in here, which would be even more survivability, and it also would be 22% strength, so there's that as an option to replace this as well. Obviously, that would need a second Umbral Forma for this build, which, a lot of people are not going to want to do. But it's just another option that's interesting to try, I think. But yeah, so that's like the flexibility that the shard system has opened up for Mesa, and just the absolute insane buff of way more speed for her. But yeah, we're gonna do it's gonna be extremely easy. It's just you all know that Mesa can do the Steel Path mission, right? Regardless, let's go kill some Grenier. It should be a good time. Thanks for watching, everybody. All right, in and out. 10-minute adventure. Yeah, you guys have probably, you guys probably don't have any qualms as to whether or not Mesa can do this. But it is the thing we do. People like to see it. People like to see Mesa do the thing Mesa do. Now with speed, be able to quickly go get the things down the hallways that we clear. Gotta stop backflipping. For those that don't know, this is a random weird fact. Backflipping actually goes farther than your front rolls do. If you ever want to go really fast, you can just do this. Gotta know where you're going, though. Let me throw my 3 on. Just goofing off now. So that's part of the benefit of this Mesa build, is that like the survivability is a bit overkill for what you realistically need, but that allows you to just like goof off and make mistakes. And the going fast also really helps with just like, more missions being completed more effectively with Mesa, where you can just, take her into like a sortie rescue, or like the an Archon hunt excavation, and just much more effectively, like, get all like the batteries and stuff for a mission like that, or just really just run through any mission just so much faster. A lot of like the lower level stuff is just so fast with her usually, and speeding it up even more is really your movement was really the only thing on Mesa where it's like, well, Mesa's not as fast as X, Y, and Z frame, and pumping it up to a speed where you can keep up with Wukong and certainly outkill a Wukong given Mesa's abilities, is just a really interesting trade-off. It's also worth noting that like Wukong doesn't get this like the speed boost of this style. Obviously, you could move the exact same way, but then you'd be tied for speed. So just having an alternative to kind of Wukong's amount of survivability and speed, and getting not only arguably better survivability and also an armor strip, although Wukong could of course have that theoretically, but you know, it's really interesting. Just like what the advantages are for this build, because it feels weird to be Mesa but fast, because it feels like there's kind of just no downside. Like, it really fixes the only thing I would have changed about Mesa. And clearly, I did change it. Like, given the opportunity. Kill everyone down there. Pretty good spawns on this mission, which is nice. We got pretty good tile set layout. Although our air support drops could, or life support drops could be better. There's probably a bunch at the bottom of those stairs I haven't been down yet, though. Yeah, pretty much the only thing that could make like what we're doing here as Mesa better is if I could cast my other abilities while I was in my 4. But that doesn't need to happen. We don't need that. That's not a thing that they should do. You should have to leave your 4 at some point for something, probably. Also, right there, you can see whenever I get like close with an enemy, sometimes the ring can be a little finicky. If you go for like that super maximization I said, and put the stretch mod in instead of blow, that should really fix that at close ranges. There's the life support. Those guys had it the whole time. Yeah, putting in stretch really fixes up any issues that you can have at like close range with like the ring closing, which of course normally you fix that just by like popping in and out of your 4 real quick, like, but not a huge deal. More of like another, you know, just comfort thing. Like if you find yourself like not hard landing very often, then it's not a big deal. But hard landing, like depending on the way you play, is going to trigger pretty often. For me, it's kind of tile set dependent, but like in a tile like this, for example, if I do this, often that will hit me with a hard landing. It didn't there though. I think I was going just slow enough because I rubbed against the top ceiling there. Ania. Yeah, obviously Peacemaker is not as effective against the Acolytes as it is against, like, you know, most other things, but still very good. Clear out all these enemies. Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you fully strip their armor, then the Acolytes melt like everything else, of course. I do have the Latum equipped, so it is worth noting that, like, if you're doing Steel Path content, just because violence can be super annoying, it's worth having something like the Latum, and just have it, like, you know, just charged up from, like, headshotting a few enemies. That way, if violence does show up, you can just use the Latum on him, and then problem solved at that point. We're getting the good spawns here. Huh. I feel like this node, like, hanging out where I'm hanging out right now, I feel like it's usually not this good for me, but this has been fantastic spawns. The tiles on either side must both be pretty good. What's this one? Oh, yeah, no, that's a really good tile. Not really a Mesa tile, though, but it seems like all the enemies are getting out of it rather quickly. And this is, like, an excellent tile for Mesa just because of, like, the way the line way the lines of sight are laid out here. You get to pretty much utilize your entire range here on both doors. Which, if you're looking for like a good survival tile for Mesa, that's generally what you want. Usually want 2 or 3 entrances, and then being able to see both of the entrances from like kind of one spot is like ideal. Grab that life support real quick. Not that that optimization on Mesa is ever really needed, because, I mean, you can just go hunt the enemies down. It's not like it's a problem. Being able to see them as they spawn is very nice, though. Oh, you know, I just realized I did forget to mention something about, like, the way her abilities work and the reason why we don't go for Hornet Strike. Her 2 also is a Hornet Strike stat. So not only is her 4 affected by strength and it gives you the same stat as like what Hornet Strike is, also her 2 is that. So you have multiple sources of that stat already, which is why you generally should avoid it, with Galvanized Shot being the exception. Because Galvanized Shot is not only considerably stronger whenever it's like at max, which it will be on any enemy that you'll ever need that damage for, but also the extra status is very nice and helpful against any enemy where building a lot of status is going to be effective. As you can see, like, you know, we fire so much and we're weighted towards heat, which is important on Mesa, as it allows you to stack up a ton of heat procs if you need to. Which, you know, I actually can't think of an enemy. Maybe the, like, big, like, blimp enemy carrier things that drop off enemies in Deimos on Steel Path. It's like kind of about all I can think of that you would ever use the heat ramping on, but better to build it for a situation that might come up than not. All right, second Acolyte coming in, and then we'll quickly get out of here. Torment, not Mesa versus Mesa. Oh, don't be invincible. That's rude. Here we go. Mesa wins. Who knew? Okay, just buzzing through these enemies real quickly. Now we just gotta figure out where the exit is. Gotta be through this tile downstairs? Probably? There it is. We found it. We found green. Get out of here. This is also gonna be like where you can see some of like just like the raw speed you can get, which is just fantastic. As you conquer the foe. But yeah, New Mesa, we're done gatekeeping it. Now all of you can do this nonsense yourselves. Obviously requires quite a lot of investment, but it's well worth it. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. Hope you're enjoying the free-to-play stuff that's been coming out. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. And, of course, as usual, thank you very much to all of the new and returning patrons. And especially thank you to our $10 patrons, who are Alex Parnham, Baker, Brutus Salazar, Dylan Dworsky, Ithrain, Hafan, James Harthorn, JC for Science, Jefferson Clark, Jesse Richin, I think I'm supposed to say that, Joshua Adams, Luzanth, Alec X. Williams, Minty Ginja, Michta, Nicholas Gridley, Paradise, Promoxidate, Tech Zaner, and Zeraphir. And also thank you to, of course, all the rest of the patrons. It has been really stellar with the support from you guys and everything. It has been much appreciated and really allowed me to go deep on doing website stuff with the free-to-play through and everything, which is, of course, ongoing. this month should be Duviri, so it should be extremely exciting going forward. Yeah, I'm just very excited for Duviri, getting to do all the guides and things, getting the critical path index done, and, well, maybe not done, but more complete. Anyway, thank you for watching, and much appreciated, everyone.